All right. Good evening. Welcome. I'm Pastor Chris. I think all of you know that. And our guest of honor tonight is Mr. John Wolfe, LCMS Missionary in Africa. His family lives in Nairobi, Kenya, but his work takes him all over the continent. And we've been supporting the Wolfe family ever since you first went. I'm trying to remember if that's 15 or 16. 2016. So that's terrific. And it's been much better than that. So I want to make a couple announcements and then pray for dinner. I want John to have a chance to eat before he's got to. He's not going to sing for his supper, in other words. So let him eat first. But so there are different ways that you can give. So tonight, if you want to give tonight, there's an offering plate over there. You can make your check out to Epiphany Lutheran Church and put John Wolfe or Missionary in the memo line, and then we'll make sure that it gets to the Synod. If you want some time to think about it, or you want to set up some kind of automatic payment or whatever, you can take home the prayer card that's on the table, and it tells you how you can pay through the LCMS Synod to take care of that. But the money we collect tonight is going the same place. It's just that it'll be, a big fat collection from our. I'm assuming it's going to be big and fat. So we give thanks for what the Lord provides. The other thing, let's pray. Yeah. Okay. Let's pray. Dear God, Heavenly Father, thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you for bringing John safely to be here tonight. And I know, Lord, that his 3 weeks in the States are kind of a fast and furious trip. I know he's trying to touch a lot of congregations and reach a lot of people. And so, Lord, I pray that you would give him safety on the road and then safety in the air when he gets going back home to Africa. Lord, I want to give thanks tonight for the meal and for the Brindle family for providing it. I ask, Lord, that you would bless this food to strengthen our minds and nourish our bodies. And bless our fellowship and our time of discovery and learning tonight. Be with Jen and the kids back home in Africa. COVID has made it really hard for people to travel internationally, Lord, and we pray that you would keep them in your care and in your blessing and peace. In Jesus' name, amen.
Yeah, thank you. So this is recording them?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Well, thank you for letting me spend some time with you on a Sunday afternoon. As I've shared with some of you, this trip for me is very brief. My family is not with me. It has been 3 years since we've been at Epiphany. 2018 is when we were here last. And last summer was supposed to be our home service where we would have come back and seen you then, the whole family. But because of COVID, our trips were canceled, and a lot of our missionaries have either repatriated back to the States or have stayed in Africa, and we elected to stay there. And with now Kenya, we're just starting to get vaccines. Right now we're still doing the masking, social distancing, get my temperature taken, wear gloves when I go shopping. It'll probably be that way for another couple years. So we're kind of looking at it may be a little bit for our family to come back in a little easier fashion. So this was a quick trip for me to be able to come in and visit for a few weeks. Going to about 20 churches in that many days before I'm giving myself a week of reprieve to make sure I'm not sick, to get my own COVID test and head back to Kenya. So, but I did want to share some updates of what's been going on since we were here last, and then especially what's taken place with COVID as well too. So, for those of you that may not be familiar with my family, this was not my first vocation. I was in the Air Force for 20 years. And my wife and I met in Montana. She's originally from Alaska. She was there going to a teacher's college. That was my first duty station. We met in church, and the rest is history. Had 5 kids, 20 kids, 5 kids in 20 years across the U.S. and in Korea as well too. And when I was at a point of 20 years, retirement wasn't something I was looking towards, but I had to start thinking about because the government shut down, sequestration started at that point, and it was good to start thinking about it. And one of the things that was suggested to us was look at mission work. And as it turned out, in Africa, they needed a program manager, a project manager, to oversee all the different projects we had in the continent there. And God continued to open up those doors, and that's where we're at right now. So I serve as a project manager for the LCMS's projects that are there. And the blue depicts the countries that we work in, 25 different countries. But I work with other LCMS organizations inside of some of the other ones as well, too, that aren't colored in here. The Lutheran Church in Brazil speaks Portuguese, the language that's spoken in Angola and Mozambique, and we work with them for mission work in those countries. LHF works translation projects in many different areas. Lutheran Bible Translators is in Cameroon right now, and that we are able to work with them through some of the projects that they have there. So there's actually a lot more that I work with in the continent. And my role is to be working directly with the church leaders in those countries with needs that they may have, be it theological instruction to help men to become pastors, go to a seminary. We have 8 different seminaries that we are supporting now across Africa. That is a significant increase from what it used to be. We used to send men from Africa to our U.S. seminaries and then return back. But enough have done that now that they have wanted to start their own seminaries in their own countries, and now are able to train men in those local areas. And some have even split off. Togo, which I'll talk about if I have a pointer. If you can see the country Togo, that is one where there is a French speaking seminary there, and men from 8 different French-speaking countries have come to there over the last 30 years, to the point now where they've started daughter seminaries, one in Guinea, and then one farther south in Congo, Brazzaville, where it says RC there. So we have had a need for French-speaking pastors to be able to teach in those areas. With COVID, before that we had 5 French-speaking pastors. After that, we had some that, when repatriated, decided that they wanted to transfer to a different field or retire. So we were down to 2 French-speaking pastors. And it was about that time that I was starting to learn French. So I parle français un peu. But because I had to be able to take on some of those responsibilities of working directly with the French leader, or the pastors in those churches. So my work has increased over this period of time as well, too. It's been, over these last few years, building more of those relationships, becoming more familiar with the church leaders in those countries, to be able to help them in the walk that they have. And I want to share some of those stories with you today. So one of those was being able to go meet many of these French leaders. And they meet every year in northern Togo, where the seminary is located. And it was, for me, 11-hour trek to be able to get up there. And as we got farther up, the roads got worse, and then it was just dirt, and then it was just complete dust. But we were accumulating a lot of luggage as we went along, too, because the driver had to transport all the way back down to Lomé, the capital city. So we have not only our luggage, but there's a van seat that's in there, water barrels, and other things that accumulate on top that had to be adjusted. But once we got up there, we met with, these are some of the pastors or bishops of the churches that we work with. Pastor Ngoma on the far right side, or far left side, we'll see him later on. He's in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Alberto Coutier is in the Republic of Congo as well. Ivory Coast, or a couple pastors from Ivory Coast. And then you see a white gentleman there as well. He is LHF, Lutheran Heritage Foundation representative to Africa, and the 2 of us traveled together to this conference. I wanted to meet these pastors, these bishops in their congregations, to learn about their church bodies, how large they were, where their pastors were distributed, how many congregations they had. He wanted to learn about what languages they spoke. And in the 8 different French-speaking countries we work with, there are over 500 different tribal languages. French is spoken by about 30% of that population. So French is just a common language used within education and business, and the pastors know that, but they also know their traditional language. So Tuomo Sumioki was interested in being able to help these pastors get Lutheran material into their hands in a language that their congregations could understand. And through the translation project that we have, we are able to support that. So they are currently working on translating Catechism into Kikongo for use by Pastor Ngoma in the DRC. And we were able to learn a lot about the different churches in those areas. And even our Francophone missionaries as well, too, learned quite a bit from what we were able to gather. But that work paid huge dividends as we went into the COVID situation. While I was in West Africa, I stopped by Sierra Leone, and there's a seminary that had started there really because of refugees during the Civil War conflicts that took place in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea. People moved from country to country, all part of the same people group, but in different areas, Guinea being French-speaking and Sierra Leone and Liberia being English-speaking. And when they finally settled in Djembe, the Lutherans there were sharing the gospel as they went to all these different countries, and more people wanted to learn about Christ. And that slowly turned into a teacher's school, which then later turned into a seminary. And we have had now, since the wars, we've been able to bring missionaries back into the field there and help them with some projects to be able to build a dormitory and build a library, which for me was nice to be able to go see these projects finally of what had been done. In that, I met Pastor James Yasa, who is the director of their seminary there, and he is also a pastor and a school headmaster, I guess you would say. So their church meets at this school, and inside there, it may be difficult to see, these are each tin and log or stick buildings. Each one are a different classroom for the children, and they're in the process of building a brick and mortar building right now. Where's my pointer? One of the other projects that I had to see was a print shop that they had built themselves as well too, so that they could have printed material both for the school and for the seminary. So I got to watch some of the classes that took place. One of the other pastors that had gone through seminary in St. Louis was teaching a class that day. And I also got to watch our own missionaries teach. Because of their planting cycle, the seminary here only meets for 2 months, twice a year. And then the rest of the time, these men go back to their homes and they will operate their farms. They're bivocational, so being a pastor is not their primary job, but it's something that they do in addition to be able to support themselves. So this school only runs for a short period of time, but it's because the city, or the village of Djembe was starting to grow, they wanted to be able to build a wall, I should say, around their compound. And it's very common in Africa for people to make their own bricks. They'll use mud or clay along with some straw as some binding agent, and then bake the bricks in the sun. And this one, you can see that they stuck holes inside to let it aerate and dry out a little bit more. In other countries like Malawi, I talked to some of you about Malawi, they will fire their bricks. So they'll stack them into a huge mound, have 3 troughs underneath, and cover the whole thing with mud, and then feed those troughs with fire, with wood, for 3 weeks. So you get nice and hot and get strong bricks coming out of that. So they are just about finished with this wall right now. But you see on the far right, the dormitory, and where the man with the yellow shirt is, where the library was built. Somebody had just poured water from the well, and the goat was taking advantage of that. But then, so I was there in February, and came back to Kenya. Our sons are in Boy Scouts, and one of them, along with some of the other scouts, decided that they want to do a high adventure trip to the second highest point in Africa. That is Mount Kenya. And 17,000 feet. I got as far as 15,000 feet, and I said I was good. My son did the rest of it. We go up on the 12th of March. We come down the 17th, and everything has changed. COVID had become an issue there. Schools were shut down. Churches were shut down. Curfews were in effect. we were isolated within our city of Nairobi. Flights were prevented from going out. So we're kind of stuck where we're at there. And this was similar effects, similar impacts, similar constraints across the rest of Africa. And it was very quickly, within a few months, that pastors and church bodies were asking us for some support to be able to provide for the most needy within their congregations. And one of those was with rice and food. Some was be able to have wash stations so that they could be able to wash hands and things. So my job changed very quickly to be able to provide support in these manners. This is just an example of some of the rice that was used. This is in DRC. I mentioned Pastor Ngoma before. He purchased a number of wash buckets with the funds that we were able to provide to him. And then they would pray over the work that they were going to be doing, the people that they were visiting, to be able to, that God would protect them and care for them as they're distributing these resources. So we ended up, as the LCMS, supporting 28 different relief efforts in 18 different countries, and as well as a number of different water needs as well, 12 different water harvesting systems or wells in different countries. Construction could still take place because that was deemed an essential activity. So there were 11 churches that were built during this time frame as well too. Churches couldn't meet, congregations couldn't meet, but pastors were very creative in what they were doing. They would go from village to village, and they would bring the Lord's Supper with them as they go. They would sing, they couldn't hold services, but they could meet in people's homes. Some pastors got very creative in what they were doing and wanted to be able to broadcast on the radio. In Rwanda, there was a new radio station that had started up. Rwanda has basically state-controlled media, but this was one that had started up as an independent, and they're looking for programming to be able to add to that. And it turned out that we had a donor through Mission Central provide a gift specifically for radio programming. And it worked out at this point that we were able to help this church with resources that they could buy airtime and do Sunday services. The pastor who did this, Bishop Celestine, is the leader for the Lutheran Mission in Africa, Synod of 1,000 Hills. And Rwanda is known as having 1,000 hills. Beautiful country, very mountainous, very green. But after holding the service and giving a sermon and message, he would get phone calls coming into the radio station, which he thought was pretty neat. People were asking questions, asking some very specific and detailed questions. Who is this Jesus? Who is this God who forgives sins? And he was enjoying this to the point that he said, I need some more pastors because it was overwhelming for him. People were asking for him to meet after church or after, during the week, one-on-one. And so he got other pastors involved with them. They had to learn how to talk on the radio. They learned some skills that were new for them. But then they were part of ministering to people as well too. He had a catchment area of about 3 million people in eastern Rwanda, Uganda, and South Sudan. And they are now in their 4th iteration, so going on a full year that they are doing this radio ministry. Also in two church bodies in Tanzania did the same thing as well too. So people are being able to reach out and hear about this in ways that hadn't been.
So can
Yeah.
So God to forgive sin.
The Catholic Church and the Anglican are the two largest in Rwanda. And there is pressure that is put on other church bodies to become part of those two church bodies. And when people hear that it's not what you need to do to please God, but what God has done on our behalf, that is good news and eliminates a lot of the fear that people live under, not only under those, but also traditional religions as well too. So that does become good news for folks. In Kenya, I mentioned that schools were shut down, and March they shut down. Until October, 2 grades were able to resume schooling so that they could take their exams into the next level. But it wasn't until January of this year that schools opened back up, and we only did so for 3 months, and then the COVID cases started coming back up where they shut school down again. So schools just now went back into session in May 10th. So that whole year was really lost and really kind of put on hold. So we are still doing the 2020 academic year right now. Kenya schools run from January to October. We will begin the 2021 academic year in July. We'll begin the 2022 academic year next year, and it'll be 2023 before we're back on track, if we don't have any further interruptions. Some of the kids that I get to work with in a program called Project 24, Christ Care for Children, I have some flyers here as well too, are children who have lost parents due to AIDS or HIV. Maybe they've lost one or both parents. Tribal conflict as well too happens in some places, especially in northwestern Kenya, where parents may have, or ranchers may have their cattle stolen by another tribe, and in trying to steal them back, instead of just using resources that they have, they start using AK-47s and guns to be able to do that. So children have lost parents as a result of that. The church has stepped in over the last 10 years to be able to provide for these kids and provide a safe location for them to grow up like any other Kenyan child. If they didn't, those children would be with an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent who already may have some children, and then these additional kids may not have the opportunity to go to school, may not have the opportunity to certainly get the 3 meals a day, or more likely have to work in order to earn for the family. So when schools shut down, those kids go back to those circumstances that they're in. The site managers in these 7 boarding facilities then got together and they said, what can we do? We have these resources to feed the children every month. What can we do for that? And they decided to be able to go visit the families where these children are at, assess what the needs are, and then in April, to be able to bring a bag of food, rice, ugali flour, oil, some sugar, basic items that family would use, other things that they could get on the market there or they could grow themselves. They did this in April, and the families were overwhelmed with the giving that took place. And in May, we were still locked down. June, we were still locked down. We were locked down until the beginning of August. Each month that these site managers and pastors and bishops and deaconesses would visit these families, now the community is starting to ask, who are these people that are coming to visit these children? Why are they coming? And they would learn it's the church that is coming to do this. These are pastors. And they said, can you come into our home? Can you pray with us? Can you sing with us? Because churches have been closed, and they hadn't been able to do that for so long. And in a culture where song, where social contact, where families are key, where your identity is your clan, is your tribe, now to have that all separated was very difficult for a lot of people. We saw an increase in domestic violence, in teenage pregnancies during this time frame, as well as a return to a lot of traditional beliefs. So to be able to have a church that is taking care of and visiting families was significant. They would go and bring the food to them, pray with them. After many months, the pastors got to know these children and the families a lot better as well too, and would counsel the children and would counsel the parents as well too, to avoid some of these things that we are seeing come up in the rest of Kenya. Some of them had to travel very far distances and obscure locations. This case in northwestern Kenya in Pokot County, they do have a mountainous terrain there, and it does rain, and when it rains, it floods. And the road had washed out, and the team that went to go deliver food to this family was stuck for about 3 days until the waters came down and went back. It's not uncommon now for flooding to take place there, largely because of agricultural practices, where land may be cleared in order to put a field in there, which then causes erosion and flooding. But this has happened for a number of seasons, to the point that the tribal leaders have said the reasons for these floods, the reasons for these COVID, is because we're not adhering to traditional practices. We're not doing the required ceremonies for our girls to become women, and we need to do that. And they were forcing girls to go through very painful ceremonies to become marriageable or eligible for marriage. And children get trapped into this as well too, because they feel that if they don't do these things, then a husband or a potential husband may not want to marry them. And we had 3 kids that were caught in this type of a situation, 3 girls. And it was to the point where the children's officer in that county came to the site manager at that site and said, I know your site is closed, schools have not reopened, but please take these children back. They will be safer here. And it was horrible situations that the kids were in, but it was a blessing that the county recognized the work of the church, that these kids have a safe environment there, that they get to hear about Christ, and that to pull them away from these traditional practices are harmful to their bodies and harmful to their families as well. This is one picture that I do like. This boy is from Othoro. It's an all-boys site, but he lives with his mother, who has lost her husband. She has other children as well too, but she was very happy to receive the gifts that they had received. Very modest home that you can see there. Not uncommon for a home to be built of sticks with mud on the side. She chose to paint it, and for me I like this house. It's very nice compared to some of the others I've seen. And she actually planted some plants around there as well too. In southern Kenya, there is a tribe of people called the Maasai, and they have very traditional beliefs. If you would compare them to the Amish in our own country that maintain their way of travel, their garb, they do the same thing there. These are nomads that herd cattle. They will, for special occasions, cut a vein in the cow to drain the blood into a gourd and mix that with milk, and that is their celebration drink for that. But kids learn at a very young age how to herd goats and how to take care of the cattle. And this school as well was shut down. It wasn't, as I mentioned in January, that the schools were able to open back up as well as the boarding facilities. So our program director went down there to be able to see the kids and see how they're doing at school. You can see all the schools, the types of desks that the kids sit in. Normally there are 3 children per desk, and the desks are very close, about 60 kids in a classroom. So this became very difficult for the school. These were grade 8 students who were preparing for their exams, so they were allowed to come back in October. But you can see 1 kid per desk, which looks normal for us in the US, but in Kenya it's very difficult for them to be able to manage. But she was able to take her mask off for us. This strain, though, of the changed procedures for school became very difficult for some of the kids as well. And we had a number of school burnings and staff beatings that took place as well too. I mean, just very... Like students that beat up teachers, yes. I don't want to say, just to provide some perspective, that it was very difficult for a lot of the kids to go through some of these situations. They have not been isolated in that manner. In a culture where people are very close together, a lot of them were rebelling because of what they were doing, what they were having forced to go through. We saw a lot more homelessness and children begging for food as well too in the streets. So that they're able to have a program like Project 24 to be able to put these kids in a Christ-centered environment where they can nurture, helps not just them but helps their communities as well too. That girl, being Maasai, lives, this is her village, if you will. They live in Manyatas. That is a stick home with woven with other sticks, and they use kind of a mud, ash, and cow dung slurry to be able to put on the sides of the building, and it kind of makes it somewhat water resistant. Then they put a thatched roof on top of it. But very traditional in their dress with the shukas. I should have brought my shuka with me as well too. And the very exotic beads that the women wear. We do have some of these animals in this area as well too. Ostriches. Some of the boarding facilities got creative in the work that they're doing as well too. In northern Kenya, they saw that there was an opportunity to grow some corn, so they hired out 2 acres of land. And this was what their crop was like afterwards. So very tall corn. Some of the kids who had gone through the Project 24 program, though, came back and helped them harvest the grains, or harvest the corn. And were able to shuck it and then shell it and grind it. This becomes a staple for them. That corn they'll bring to a mill, and it'll crush it into basically a powder, and then they can put some into boiling water and stir it, basically like multi-meal, and that becomes their starch that they'll eat. They'll put that form it into a little bowl and put it over kind of a kale that they eat, or chicken stew, or beans as their main meal. So they do get a lot of vitamin C, vitamin D from the sun, zinc from the pumpkins they eat, tea, they get antioxidants from the green tea. So we haven't seen a lot of COVID cases, but the effects of the constraints have been a larger impact on the economy and on family life in Kenya. This was my last day as Scoutmaster, so I'm no longer Scoutmaster. I get to go back to normal life of doing things. But Sean is 16. He is a Life Scout now, soon to start working on his Eagle Project. Thad is 13. He'll be a freshman this year. Anna is 11, and Angus is 6. And this is one of the pictures from Mount Kenya you see in the background when we did our hike up there. So it took us a 6-day trip, 4 days to get up there and 2 days to get back down. Oh, this is a Jackson chameleon. So my kids find these things around. Oh, and bamboo. We snagged somebody's treat as well. They're very handy in doing that. We've had monkeys come into our house and they steal our bananas. You'll see bananas right across the yard. They've taken apples. Our dogs are not very good cards when it comes to that. What else are we going to put up here? Okay. So just south of Nairobi is a national wildlife preserve. So you can see Nairobi skyline in the background there. Some of the zebras, and I think I have a picture of a giraffe that we got really close to there. Eating acacia trees. Acacia trees have very long thorns on them. I don't like getting pricked by it because it stings a little bit, but the giraffe don't seem to be bothered by this. They have very long tongues and a saliva that is antibacterial, so it's very good for them. If you chose to, you could feed a giraffe a pellet out of your mouth if you wanted to. You could do that. So, I know I've shown this picture before, but I still like this photo. The work that the LCMS has called us to is to be able to help things like this take place. This is in northern Kenya, and it is a pastor who is from the ELCK, who's been trained at a seminary that the LCMS had sponsored. And he's sharing the gospel in 3 different languages here. In English in one, Kiswahili, but he's also sharing in the local Turkana language. And he's in a church that congregation built themselves. They built the walls, they put the floor in. We just helped them with the roof. So it's something that they did themselves. It's not something we did for them. And they're, in some cases, coming very long distance to be able to hear that gospel and then return back to their own villages to be able to share that and proliferate it. So that's the work that we do. I'm not up front, and I'm behind the scenes, being able to help walk alongside churches, be able to help them be able to share the gospel in their own way, in their own languages, to their people groups. And that's why the Lord has called us there to be able to do this, not just in northern Kenya, but across Africa. So it's a pleasure for us to be part of this, to let you be part of it as well too, to let you be part of what your church is doing across the continent of Africa, and to be able to see how the Lord is working there to be able to spread the gospel and bring people to Christ. So very important in the work that people hear it, and that they know that they don't have to fear. They don't have to fear the tribal religions. They don't have to fear the diseases. Christ has died for them, overcome sin, death, and the devil, and that is a blessed message for many in Africa. So thank you again. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you. I do correspond sometimes, but it's always good. And I'm sorry my newsletters don't come out often enough. I do have some in the queue that I have to finish writing to get them out. But thank you so much for the time. Yes, ma'am. So there are people that know accounting better than I do, okay? The monies that go to us go towards our operating budget. And that is what provides a house for us. But it provides the ability for me to travel. It provides some of the office things that I need to be able to communicate with others. It helps the insurance for my family as well, but I am also, for my retirement, for my Air Force retirement, I am paying for insurance in that regards as well too. But it allows us to be there in Kenya as a family. Okay. The work that, or the funding that helps the individual projects, and I have a copy of the project catalog here, these go to fund those individual efforts. So part of my work is to be able to issue a grant to a church body for a project that they might want to do. And I receive an application from them, I review that, I see what their plan is for spending their money, how they're going to evaluate their work. And our strategic priorities for the Synod is one, spreading the gospel, planting churches, to be able to do that. Closely underneath of that is human care in connection with word and sacrament. So there may be a need that a church body has where they have got displaced people from their congregation. They want to be able to provide food and tents and canopies for them. And my questions to them will be, well, where's the gospel in this project that you may be doing? We don't have the resources for all these other humanitarian needs, but we do have the ability to share the gospel, and that's what I'm interested in. But at the same time, then I'm also looking to see what is available in their own country that they can take advantage of. In Burkina Faso, where you have Boko Haram just to the north, coming into the country there, UNESCO has stations in different parts. And I can see what resources they have available to them, or I can contact people, and I've advised the church, some of these things that you're asking for are available nearby you already that you can take advantage of. Maybe they're a refugee settlement, or maybe they're at a station there, so that the resources that we're given can be used for what we're able to do best. Answer. So yeah, part of my work is looking at all these budget lines and using those resources appropriately. Yes. So having relationships with the churches and understand what their context is then helps me be able to either promote that project through the means of a project catalog or to congregations that may be interested. Sometimes I get emails or contact directly from donors that are interested in a particular thing. Or I will work through those inside the LCMS whose role is to promote projects through Mission Advancement or Mission Central. They may have donors that are interested in a particular area. So the more that we can do to share what our church is doing, that helps communicate out and lets other people be part of the work that's taking place. Yes, ma'am.
Do you work with other organizations that also help? Like there's a lot of organizations,
Yes, there are many, and I do get requests to work through some. There is one that is dealing with water, and they're a kind of a pan-Christian organization, and one of the board members is LCMS. So she wanted to be able to see if we could be engaged in what they're doing. Sometimes it's not always easy to look through what an organization believes and what messages they may be promoting. Sometimes we have to say no, or I recommend that we say no in these cases. There is a project, the LWML from Epiphany has supported us before, and in 2019, LWML National gave a grant for the Water and the Word project inside Kenya to be able to put water harvesting systems in ELCK-sponsored schools. And during this COVID situation, this project came at the perfect time because construction was deemed one of those essential services. So they were able to construct these water harvesting systems. Where we put the tanks in place, the schools would put the platform for the tank and put the flashing so the gutters could be put in place. Some specific criteria that had to be met for the school, so it was a partnership. It wasn't just things that were being given to them. That project was being done through the Rotary Club. It was a connection that LWML person had with Rotary Club, and the Rotary Club was working with Running Water International inside Kenya. So in that regard, we were able to work with other organizations that way. I've learned more about different groups. RSOs within the LCMS are fairly easy to work with. So Lutheran Heritage Foundation, I mentioned we've been doing some translation work with them. Lutheran Bible translators. I've had some donors interested in distributing Bibles and getting Bibles out to different places. So I've put them in touch with other organizations that do that more directly.
I could, but I'd rather.
Sure.
You have the microphone.
They provide translation of Lutheran material for pastors to use in sharing the gospel in their congregations. A big one is Lutheran, the small catechism. They'll do an Accordion first, just with the commandments and the 6 articles, and then they'll build upon it with the meanings in it as well too. And to do that, they need somebody within the church body who can speak English or French, and then be able to translate it into their native language as well too. And it's best if that person can have other people review the translation, even from other church bodies, so that they're making one for that country versus one for one church, one for another church. And so one of our projects is provide funds for translation work. Be it if a student at seminary wants to translate a hymn or a liturgy, or for things like this for a catechism. Yes, sir. One of the highs is being able to see a church do something on their own. One of the lows, I would say, is when one church takes a lot of time to be able to work through a relationship. And it takes some nurturing, where a church may ask for large amounts of money and persist in what they're doing, and to the point where they start asking other people within the U.S. for support as well too. And it can send kind of a conflicting message. We may have limited resources, and I like it when a church is able to contribute themselves and to be able to do something on their own, where we're helping them, we're a partner with them. We're not the sole benefactor. So each of the contexts are different. It's a lot sometimes to juggle back and forth. I use OneNote to track all of my conversations, all of my emails. I'll cut and paste them because I don't have to reconstruct a conversation that might have happened 2 weeks ago. It's cumbersome to have to go do that. So I don't have the brain power to be able to remember all the things at one time, and that gets frustrating sometimes. But it has been a joy for our family to be over there. Yes. I think, and some other missionaries have noted this as well too, that our kids have kind of seemed to jump into this and just swim very easily. But it's really because I think God prepared us for this. We moved many times inside the Air Force. My wife has lived overseas as well too. She spent 15 years working with students who would come from other countries into the U.S. So she would step them through the stages a person goes through in culture shock. The waves, the honeymoon, and then the extreme depression, and then somewhere it kind of works down the middle. So she's had to work. She's helped our kids through those things as well too, and be able to identify that. So for our family, it's been just another move for us. For our kids, though, they get to have pets. They haven't had pets in so many years because we haven't been in one place at one time. We have our compound is big enough so our kids can run around. There are trees that they can climb in. Sean, we were able to buy some timbers at a local market. So he, using his Boy Scout skills of ropes and lashings, he made a tree house during this COVID situation. So, yeah, they're having a lot of fun. Yes, sir.
Does the Kenyan government impose any kind of restrictions upon worship or churches? Is there freedom of religion in the country?
Yes, freedom of religion, certainly. In Nairobi is a very international city. When you start going to other outskirt areas closer to Somalia, Christianity is not looked highly upon in some of those areas, and some of the Al-Shabaab that have come across the border have killed Christians. You may have heard about the nurses that were in a bus probably about a couple years ago, where they were asked to step off, and if they confessed that they believed the Islamic religion, then they could live. And so that happens sometimes. We had the Dusset bombing a couple years ago. But churches, for the most part, are able to operate freely. During the age of COVID right now, we're limited to 30% occupancy. We have to wear masks, and services can only be 1 hour long. But the Lutheran Church and the Anglican Church were the two biggest that said we need to have communion. We need to be able to do this. So we've been able to at least have communion, which is nice. But for the 4 months that were locked down, we didn't at all. We didn't meet together. We didn't even offer communion during that time frame. So it was nice to be able to come back to that. It's not the same case in other countries in Africa, though. So.
Who are your neighbors?
That's a good question. Where we live, there are other expats. There are Kenyans that live there as well, too. Our missionary team is not far. One is about 1.5 kilometers. One is about 3 kilometers south of where I'm at, and probably closest to our office where we're at located. But some of my neighbors are in government. Some are not. We have a WhatsApp group so we can communicate within our street. If anybody sees anything that's out of the ordinary, so we try to maintain at least a sense of neighborhood in that case to try to watch out for each other. We do the same thing with our missionaries as well too. Just to be aware if there is traffic blocked in one particular area, we'll kind of let them know, don't drive down this place. I was trying to get home one time and there was a protest taking place on top of buses, people on and off the buses, and they were blocking the traffic coming through. And what I ended up doing was avoiding the roundabout, did a U-turn and went back and took a different route home that time. So that doesn't always happen, but we need to be prepared and communicate that with others so that they're aware as well too. So part of my job, because I'm one guy from the military, is to be the security advisor for our team in Kenya and across Africa. So I get to have that connection with the embassy, with their security groups, with the regional security manager for the embassy. So being in Scouts has actually helped that because that's the embassy community. And I can ask them questions, like when COVID was taking place, how are you guys responding to this? What are you doing for determining levels of acceptable risk for returning back to activities? So the Scouts has been fun and a great adventure for our kids, but for me, it's a link into some more awareness that I wouldn't otherwise have. Yes, sir. For Kenya, France, ironically, they are one of the grocery stores is French owned, and another one that is locally owned is about 30% owned by France. China is doing a lot of investment in Kenya right now. Infrastructure, roads, rails, where they're trying to put in highways to be able to make it easier for travel, but also make it easier for resources to be sent out as well too. They just were installing a port as well as a railway yard in Nairobi so that goods would come in from the country and then be exported out from there. Money is a dangerous thing. People will be attracted to it, and then it results in a lot of corruption activities that take place within different sectors of different areas. So that's part of our role, is navigating within some of those environments as well. We don't engage in corruption, which means sometimes things take a lot longer. So, yeah, that's a good question. Yes. Well, thank you for your time. It's a pleasure. I'll be here for a little bit longer. I brought some things if you'd like to take a look at them, or I do have pamphlets for the children's program, Christ Care for Children Kenya, as well as a project catalog as well too. I'll leave these for you to take a look at. This one expires June of 21, which is why I have to get back to be able to finish working on the next project catalog. It'll be posted online first. On the top here it says international@lcms.org, where we'll post it online, but if you'd like a copy as well too, I could have one sent to your church. But many of the projects from 21 will carry over into 22 as well. Okay. For the mission, I think I mentioned we've had kind of a decrease in people on the field. And that's increased some of the work that I've done, but others have done as well too. And it looks like we might lose some additional folks. That's probably going to change the way that we work with churches as well, where we're going to have to prioritize. We can do these things during this time period. The other ones we can do later on in the year. And we haven't figured that all out yet. I hope that we're able to have some of our members of our team be able to stay on with us, that we'll have the resources to be able to do that.
The harvest is plentiful and the workers are few.
Yes, yes.
Pray therefore to the Lord of the harvest to send out workers.
Yes, yes. It's gotten very busy. I took leave in October just so I could catch up on work. And then I did it in November again. My boss said, no, you can't do this. You actually have to take leave to take leave. I said, well, that's kind of tough to do. So my inbox is queuing up right now with my emails. So pray for the workers in the field. For our family, Ian is finishing school right now, getting ready to prepare for college. So we have to go through the application process of that. He is interested in Cape Town, which is on a Southern Hemisphere schedule, so he'll start the applications this summer for a January school start. And I guess the schooling for our kids as well too, in general. It may be a couple of years before we're able to come back here as well too, so that endurance to be able to follow Lord's guidance and will for our family in that time frame. For myself, I don't know, just be able to balance everything. He gives us the strength that we need in our daily walk. So, that's good. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all. I appreciate it. Thank you for being here. If you haven't signed up for our newsletter and you don't receive that yet, I do have a place where you can put your name and email address on there. But for those that have already, thank you for being part of this, for being with us. So thank you.